Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition, or I guess the first edition of the DFO DFS Report. New name for the show, same great show though. Sorry for being a little bit late. I went to start recording, or I went to go live and realized that I recorded my podcast yesterday, which my mic was in the garage. This is in my office, so a little bit of a mad scramble there at the last minute. Classic Monday stuff. I hope everyone's doing well. I forgot. I didn't have time to tweet out the link on the YouTube link. So hopefully, people come in, filter in here as we go. But yeah, we've got a 4-game slate on our hands for this Monday. Please write in the comments if you can't hear me or if my audio sounds bad. Like I said, it was a total scramble just to get, go live here the last couple minutes. So 4-game slate. We've got the Flyers and the Kraken, which will have Carter Hart starting for the Flyers. Audio is fine. Perfect. Thank you so much. So yeah, we got Carter Hart for the Flyers. We are expecting to see Philip Grubauer for the Seattle Kraken. The Toronto Maple Leafs will host the New York Rangers. It's going to be Jack Campbell for the Maple Leafs, and not just tonight, but mostly for the foreseeable future, at least for now, while Peter Mrazek is out with a groin injury. So I talked about it on my podcast yesterday. If you're in season-long leagues, Jack Campbell, he's not widely available, but he is still available in some leagues, and he needs to be 100% owned right now. He's looked great since putting on a Leafs uni. And he's going to be starting a lot of games here moving forward. The Rangers, Gerard Gallant just declined to announce a starting goalie. Apparently, that's what he's going to do this year, which is super lame. We expect to see Igor Shesterkin. It did not go very well for Alexander Georgiev in his first start, so it most likely will be Shesterkin. But again, who knows? He surprised us on opening night. So the Flames will go with Jacob Markstrom. The Anaheim Ducks will get John Gibson back between the pipes. And then in the nightcap, we've got the Arizona Coyotes hosting the St. Louis Blues. Carter Hutton will start the home opener for the Coyotes, facing his former team, the St. Louis Blues, who will go with Jordan Binnington. So that's that. I've added a couple of just little features here to the Google Sheet, one of which is the implied totals, which I've always kind of provided. If you can see them in the top right-hand corner of the screen, that's our game-by-game breakdown, and I'll, we'll move along as we go. But here's just kind of a better, more visual look at it and ranked by who's expected to score the most goals tonight. So implied total at the top tonight, Toronto Maple Leafs, 3.53 goals, the Calgary Flames, St. Louis Blues, Philadelphia Flyers. So those are the 4 teams that we're really going to be targeting tonight. Teams that we're going to try to get as much exposure to as possible. Obviously, Seattle looks okay as well. The Rangers look solid. Same cannot be said about the Anaheim Ducks or Arizona Coyotes. So probably going to stay away from those teams as much as possible and try to find ways to build nice lineups that are different from everybody else with some of these top teams on tonight's slate. So if we take a look here at the 5v5 score, unsurprisingly, Toronto won. Back at the top of the list, they get Austin Matthews back tonight. He will make his season debut, which is great news. Let me just make this a little bit bigger, a little bit easier for you guys to see. So yeah, Austin Matthews back on the top line tonight. They are by far the top target on the slate. Philadelphia 1 looks really good as well. They didn't do much in the first game until, the third period. Late in the third period, they really got hot. But I do like Philly 1 a lot tonight. That's a line that's really always played pretty well when the 3 of them are together. So I like them moving forward. St. Louis 2 looks solid. Again, we'll get into all this stuff here in a minute. Toronto 2 now with John Tavares moving back. William Neelander has been unquestionably the Leafs' best player through the first few games of the season. So hopefully he can provide a little bit of a spark for John Tavares. Michael Bunting still on that wing. Looks like a nice value play tonight. Calgary 1 looks solid. New York 2. But let's get right into it. We'll break these games down. The one thing that I did add, and I think it's going to be really cool, is I added a matchup score. So basically what this is it's an easy visual representation of which lines have the best matchups in this game. So the 5v5 score overall is their offensive numbers versus the defensive numbers of the opposing lines that they are going to face. This takes the offensive numbers just completely out of it and is solely based on how bad or how good defensively the lines that they're going to be facing are. So now when you look at this matchup table, you don't have to so much try to memorize the numbers and then go see how those numbers stack up against the lines they're playing defensively. So this is just an easy way to look at it and be like, holy shit, Toronto is good. St. Louis, they have good matchups. Obviously, the Coyotes not a very good defensive team. So this is just an easy way to find out which lines have the best matchups. So the higher the score, 100 would be the 100th percentile, which means the Toronto Maple Leafs have the best matchups tonight. And then obviously you've got, the Blues look like they've got about the next 4 highest matchups. So very easy to find out and identify which lines have the best. And then you can dig into the numbers a little bit more. It should speed up the process a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Again, it'll be on a score from 0 to 100 every single night, just based on the percentile and where these lines fall in. So we'll start at the top here with Philadelphia Flyers and the Seattle Kraken. It looks like the only line, as I mentioned off the top, that looks like it's really worth targeting in this game is Philadelphia 1. They got some of the better matchups on the entire slate. They're going to go primarily head-to-head against the top 6 of the Seattle Kraken, which is no surprise. Sean Couturier always goes up against the other team's best lines more often than not. So, Seattle's looked solid before, or so far, I should say. I've talked about on this show quite a bit that I think Seattle's a fine team, but they're not going to score a lot of goals. They're pretty solid defensively. So I wouldn't be surprised if they muddy the waters a little bit against the Flyers tonight, but the Flyers should be the superior of the two teams and should be able to come out on top. So if you want to take a stab at maybe one of the lower owned goaltenders tonight, I think Carter Hart will be that. Excuse me. Just because there's better options on this slate. Markstrom obviously looks really good against the Ducks. Binnington's too cheap against the Coyotes. So those two guys will take up a lot of ownership. And I think Carter Hart is in a decent spot here. I'm not the biggest Carter Hart truther. I think he's an okay goalie. But against a Seattle team that's not going to score a lot. He's decent. I'm choking right now really bad. Sorry. I want to have water or a beer here to save me today. Philadelphia 1 looks like the best. Seattle, not so much. If we dig into Philadelphia's numbers a little bit here, really, really good. We look at offensive score. They're the second best offensive line behind the Toronto Maple Leafs on this slate. So really, really good offensive numbers as a whole. They're going to be going up against this top 6 of the Kraken, which hasn't been particularly good. The Kraken top line's been giving up plenty of scoring chances. They've been getting on the score sheet. Hart makes me choke. Yeah, he's not a pretty option, but I'm thinking that he probably won't be very high owned tonight because he makes everybody choke realistically. So I think that the Kraken are going to have a tough time scoring goals in this one. And he's a lower owned option. Definitely not my favorite, but if you're trying to get different, I think he's a decent play. They should have plenty of success against this top line of the Kraken, which has not been very good. 48% Corsi for, 43% expected goals for percentage. So they should have their way with them. The second line, the Wenberg line, has been pretty mediocre as well. So it should be pretty easy sailing for Philadelphia 1 tonight. Really, really like them. Philadelphia 2 grades out with the worst matchup on the entire slate. They're going to play the majority of their ice time against the Kraken third line, which I believe is the best defensive line on the entire slate, which it is. So that line's done a really, really good job. That's Morgan Geekie, Brandon Tanev, Ryan Donato. They've done a tremendous job early on. Graded as the best defensive line on the entire slate, going to make things difficult on Philadelphia too. So I'm not going to really be looking at Derek Brassard and company tonight. I think for me, it's basically Flyers 1 or bust. Again, I talked about it the other day. One way that you can kind of just differentiate with Flyers 1 is by adding James Van Riemsdyk into the mix, get that power play stack going. Keith Yandle's pretty cheap again, nice affordable defenseman on power play 1. If you want to play other Flyers defensemen, we talked about Ryan Ellis a little bit in the Flyers first game. Him and Provorov played like 28 minutes or 29 minutes, something absurd. So they're both obviously pretty decent options. But yeah, James Van Riemsdyk at 5,000. I think he had 3 shots on goal. Pretty solid performance in his first game. I can't remember if he got on the score sheet, but he's another way just to kind of differentiate. If you are wanting to play Seattle, if you're building 100 lineups or 150 lineups or 20 lineups or whatever it is, and you want to kind of just get exposure to a bunch of different teams, I hate to just say, hey, just always play these top lines, but the top line looks like the only one that's really worth targeting. It is going to be pretty difficult for them going up primarily against that Couturier line, which is quite good defensively. And just the Flyers as a whole are pretty good defensively. So I don't love Seattle tonight, as I mentioned off the top. So if you are going to play them, though, I think you just basically by default have to play that McCann line. They are very cheap still for the most part. 15,300 in full stack. Schwartz just 3,900 is far too cheap. Eberle and McCann both at 5,700 are a little bit more expensive, but they're playing a ton. As you see here, they're seeing 30% of the tab, they're seeing 30% of the Seattle Kraken's 5v5 minutes. So they're playing a ton. They're worth a play if you're building a ton of lineups. Are you sprinkling in some Geeky tonight? Yeah, like I still think Geeky is going to have plenty of success this season. I really like him a lot, but tonight probably not. Going to be seeing quite a bit of Flyers 2 and Flyers 3, which, as you see here, both are particularly Flyers 3 very good defensively. So, yeah, I just think that line's going to have a lot of trouble against a really solid Flyers bottom six. So, maybe sprinkling them in a little bit here and there, but I think there's better value plays on this slate tonight. All right, Toronto and the Rangers, which, as I mentioned off the top, the Maple Leafs with the highest implied total on the entire slate. The Maple Leafs top line comes in with the best 5v5 score on the entire slate as well. So yeah, I think that, Leafs 1 looks really, really good. No surprise there. The good news is that because this slate isn't loaded with talent, they're very expensive. So 8,400 and 8,000 respectively for Matthews and Marner. So it is going to be difficult to play them with anything of substance. So kind of finding the right value plays and right value lines to stack with them is going to be imperative, I think, to having success tonight. I don't love Nick Ritchie. If he was on top power play with them, I would have a little bit more interest in him. I think to save salary, you can play him with him. He could very easily just get one go off his ass and in the net and hit value for you. But I think there are better value options. He has not done anything to date. Maybe Matthews coming back will be the boost that he needs. So I do like playing him a little bit just because I think other people are going to stay away from him just because he's been so dog shit. But Matthews coming back, I talked about it in my shows before, that when Tavares and Marner are together and there's no Matthews, they've struggled together. So it was no surprise for them to have struggled like they did in the first few games. Matthews coming back should really ignite that line. So if people are going to stay off Ritchie, then I think including him is fine. Marshark says hat-trick coming for Ritchie. Yeah, and I don't think he'll carry crazy ownership because people are probably just think he's terrible, which I think he is, but he's in a good spot with Matthews and Marner and does provide you with some salary relief. The second line, Bunting at 3,700. He's looked really solid for them as well. Neelander at 6,300 is far too cheap. He's one of my favorite plays in the entire slate. Tavares at 8,000. That's a steep price to pay, but it should keep his ownership down, way down, I would imagine. Not too many people. If they're building Leafs power play stacks, I don't think you can even fit all 5 of them comfortably. So he'll probably be the one that gets left out, and for good reason. So if you want to kind of just take advantage of some of that, dip in ownership, I think that Tavares and Neelander will come in significantly lower than both Matthews and Marner. For the Rangers, if you aren't aware, Capo Caco is out. He landed on IR. Ryan Strome also out. So the top line, or the second line, I suppose, for the Rangers is Panarin, Heidel, and Barclay Goodrow. Not a great look for the bread man. Him and Heidel, we'll get to their numbers in a little bit, haven't been terrific together. But maybe people will check dailyfaceoff.com and be like, ooh, he's playing with Heidel and Goodrow and not want to play him. And he'll come in at maybe a discounted ownership tonight. So he's still one of the best players in the entire world. The top line for the Maple Leafs, as I mentioned off the top, best matchup on the entire slate. But the Leafs as a whole, really, really good matchups. The second line, grayed out very, very well. Third line looks like they're in a good spot. Fourth line, too. I mean, the Rangers just aren't very good defensively. On the flip side, the Rangers top line looks like they've got a much better matchup than the Rangers second line. So if you want to go with Zibanejad and Lafreniere as opposed to the Panarin line that is, decimated, then I think that makes a lot of sense as well. In terms of the numbers, so the Leafs top line is going to be going up primarily against that Panarin line, which is really what hurts the Panarin line's numbers. Getting Barclay Goodrow on that line should help them out defensively a little bit, but Heidel and Panarin together have been absolutely disastrous defensively. So I don't think Barclay Goodrow can just come in there and save the day. I think they're still going to be pretty brutal defensively. And then the Maple Leafs top line, which grades out as the best offensive line on the slate, should have plenty of success there. So they should be able to dominate that matchup all night long. As for the second line of the Maple Leafs, they're going to see a lot of the Zibanejad line, but quite a bit of the third line for the Rangers as well. So the Zibanejad line, slightly below average defensively. Third line, slightly above average defensively, maybe a little bit better than slightly. But as I mentioned, when you move Heidel up to that second line, that leaves you with a third line of Sammy Blake, Kevin Rooney, Julian Gauthier. Not necessarily a murderer's row of third line players. So I think this is another matchup that Toronto too can definitely take advantage of. I think that the Leafs the Leafs need a solid performance. The Rangers have not looked great thus far. Losing a couple of key top 6 players isn't going to help them pick things up anytime soon. So the Leafs look like a really, really nice target tonight. I think Jack Campbell's also a pretty good option between the pipes. I believe, though, he is the most expensive goaltender on the slate, if I'm not mistaken. So that obviously will help keep his ownership down as well. Let me just double check. Yeah, he is the most expensive goalie at 8,400. So that should help keep his ownership down as well, as people will, undoubtedly gravitate towards Markstrom, who's got a better matchup and is cheaper. Binnington, same goes for him as well. But yeah, not a great, doesn't look like a great matchup here for Rangers 2. But Rangers 1, let's get to them now just for a second here, because they do have a pretty good matchup, score 71 percentile here. They're going to see quite a bit of the Jason Spezza line, it appears. I'm not really sure what that's about, but that's what they did in their first game this year. The Leafs did against Ottawa. So that line, not very good defensively. I don't know why you would want to match that line up against the Mika's advantage that line. I'd be surprised if that's how it works out. But if they see just even a few minutes against this Leafs bottom 6 tonight, they should be able to have success. But as I've mentioned in the past, it's not a line that's really that great offensively. But I'd still want to be patient with this line because Lafreniere has looked a lot better this year than he has last year. I believe last year he was averaging like 1.2 shots per game. So far through 3 games, he's averaging 3 shots this year. So he's shooting the puck a lot more. There's some encouraging signs from Lafreniere. So while he's still super cheap, I think I want to try to take advantage of that price as opposed to trying to go down, pay up for the Rangers second line. Lafreniere just 3,300. Now, if you're building a lot of lineups, I don't love New York 2's matchup. I don't love that, they've got Heidel and Gaudreau on that line. Heidel at 3,000 playing with Panarin is still a decent value option. I think Heidel and Lexi Lafreniere are 2 of the better value options on tonight's slate as well. So, while I don't love Panarin and I don't love the second line of the Rangers, it's hard to deny getting a guy who, if you look at their bottom 6, that top 6 should play a ton. Heidel should see a ton of minutes tonight at 3,000 with Panarin. It's hard to kind of argue against that. So I still think he's a pretty decent value option despite a relatively difficult matchup. All right, third game of the night, we've got the Flames and the Ducks. The Ducks get John Gibson back in net tonight. He had an outstanding season debut. Hopefully, if you're playing the Flames tonight, that does not continue tonight. If you missed it, the Flames will get Blake Coleman back in the lineup. Now, Blake Coleman was skating down the top line with Lindholm and Tkachuk for the majority of the preseason. But then Gaudreau had a terrific game there for them in their season opener. And so they're going to keep that line intact. And then Coleman will start out on the third line. So let's take a look at the matchups here. Again, Calgary 1 grades out as the best option in this game. Actually, the rest of the lines all have a below average rating, so it doesn't really look like anybody outside of Calgary 1 should be targeted in this game. However, I will say that I still like Blake Coleman quite a bit. Michael Bachman they do like to play Michael Bachman a lot. Coleman should still see plenty of ice time. He's a guy that loves to shoot the puck, is not shy to fire the biscuit on net. And he's just 3,100. So he's another one of my top value plays at the forward position this evening. In terms of the matchups, Calgary 1 actually has the worst matchups for the Flames, but they are their best offensive line by far. Overall, the Flames have pretty good matchups across the board. The Ducks, again, not a very good defensive team. Shouldn't come as much of a surprise. But as I mentioned, the Flames, their bottom 9, if you want to call it that, all grade out either just around average or slightly below average. Offensively, where the top line looked outstanding. I think Matt Tkachuk got 9 pucks on net in the season opener. So they're you've got Gaudreau, you've got Tkachuk. Those are 2 guys that are really looking to have bounce back seasons. Everything from the first game, again, I'm not going to read too much into one game, but everything that you saw in that first game is super encouraging for them. So I want to kind of just ride that wave, and hopefully they will too, and carry it into the second game in a much better matchup against the Ducks. So they're going to see a lot of their ice time against the top line. of the Ducks, the Zegras line, they should be able to win that matchup. Overall, that Zegras line has been okay defensively, just slightly below average, but they're getting caved in still. 48% Corsi for is not good. 43.2 expected goals for rate is horrendous. So this is a matchup that the Flames should be able to win. Obviously, it looks like the Zegras line sucks the fun out of the game a little bit. Very low event style of play, which is a little bit surprising. It's not what you'd expect out of a Trevor Zegras-led line. Eakins frustrates me. Yeah, I think Dallas Eakins frustrates everybody. He's terrible. Yeah, so this is, the only line that's really good defensively for the Ducks, and it's not even amazing, it's pretty good, is the Ryan Getzlaf line. Only giving up 18 scoring chances against per 60 is crazy. But I wouldn't let that scare me. It's only 27% of the Flames' top line's ice time was going to come against them. So most of their ice time, 63%, is going to be coming against that Zegras line, and that's a matchup that they should be able to win pretty handily. So there's just not a whole lot to love about the rest of this Flames team. I'm a big Mangiapane truther, but Monahan only played 15 minutes in the opener. It's hard to really see them getting enough ice time to make a huge difference in this game when that top line's soaking up a ton of minutes, and then the third line's also soaking up a ton of minutes. So it's hard to get excited about that second line. I think they'll have their day, but tonight is probably not it. So I'm pretty much all in on Flames 1, and then I'll try to sprinkle in some Blake Coleman as well. Just quickly as well, if you look at the power plays as well, Tkachuk, Lindholm, Gaudreau fully correlated with the top power play unit. Rasmus Anderson only got a fine, did not get suspended, so he'll be in the lineup playing. I think he's 5,000 on DK, so he's a nice defenseman to pair with that top line as well. If you do want to play that second line, super cheap. Dubé 3,300 is super cheap, but Monahan's still pretty expensive, 5,800. Mangiapane 5,100. It's just too expensive for kind of the amount of minutes that you're getting. The amount of minutes that you're going to be getting from these guys is just, it's just too expensive. Fourth game of the night is the Coyotes and the Blues. The Blues looked very, very good in their season opener against the Avalanche. Won that game pretty handily, actually. Again, the Avalanche were pretty shorthanded, so it's hard to be like, hey, man, they just came in and smashed the Avalanche. They're shorthanded. Still no Mac, no Landeskog, so very shorthanded still. But they look really good tonight again against the Coyotes, who have looked horrendous thus far. The lowest implied total on the slate goes for the Coyotes. The Blues have the second highest, or tied for the second highest implied total on the slate at 3.3 goals. The top two lines for the Blues look outstanding in this game, particularly the second line, which is a nice option because they are very cheap, and you can very easily pair them with Toronto 1. If you've watched the show before, you know that we've been burned by the Braden Shen line in the past because they always kind of seem to grade out very well at 5v5 and then don't always do the most damage on the score sheet. So be a little bit cautious. I wouldn't, go all in on them tonight because they do have a tendency to burn us. Mangiapane is underrated. Yeah, he's great. I love Mangiapane, and if he gets a full run in that top six this year, specifically if Gaudreau moves back to that Monahan line and they give that line some more minutes, I think that's a line that could have a lot of success, but he just never plays enough to really be a huge factor. But he's got back-to-back 100-point seasons in junior. I mean, he's been a prolific scorer at every stop of his career, so they just need to give him more run. But let's get into the matchups here. As I mentioned, the Blues, outside of the Maple Leafs top line, outstanding matchups, the best matchups on the slate. The second line has much better matchup than the top line, but still nothing to worry you if you want to play the O'Reilly line tonight. The Blues top line, not very good at 5v5. I've mentioned this before. I got burned a lot by O'Reilly and Perron last year because they had massive nights, but I don't think I ever played them because I go by the numbers, and they're an outstanding line when it comes down to playing defense and controlling the game and controlling the pace of play. There's few better. But offensively, they don't provide a ton. They cash in on a lot of chances, but they don't generate a ton. I mean, 23 scoring chances, 4 per 60 is not very impressive. Only 7 high danger chances is really not good at all. So I stay away from them quite a bit. They're a great real life hockey line in DFS. Not really my cup of tea. The second line, however, very, very good. 2.7 expected goals 4/60 is outstanding. Almost 32 scoring chances, 4/60 is very, very good. 11 high danger, all great across the board. They're very good defensively as well. They're going to be going up primarily. Let me just go back to the matchups for a second. The second line is going to be going primarily up against the top line of the Coyotes, which is an absolute disaster. 31 scoring chances against per 60, 45% Corsi for rating. Very, very poor. Schmaltz, Kessel line has not looked good. They have not looked right. It's only been 2 games, but this is a matchup that Braden Shen should absolutely dominate. The third line of the Blues looks very good as well. Offensively, their numbers are terrific. 31 scoring chances, 4/60, almost mirroring the production that you see out of the second line. The problem is they don't play a lot. They didn't, at least in the first game. Vladimir Tarasenko did not get enough playing time. So that concerns me a little bit, but the fact that you can get Vladimir Tarasenko at 4,700 and Robert Thomas at 3,100, that is a very nice little mini stack. I think you could probably leave Ivan Barbashev off of it. I don't think you really need to play him. He's not a guy that's, puts the puck in the net a ton. But Thomas and Tarasenko is just an outstanding mini stack. The only concern with those guys would just be the lack of playing time. They did not. I think Tarasenko capped out at like 14 minutes in the season opener, which is just not good enough for a guy that you're expecting to, have a bounce back year. But he's still on the top power play unit, which is outstanding. Robert Thomas will see some minutes on the second unit. So, I think that they're a nice mini stack. I really do. But most of my exposure will probably come to through the Blues with that second line, just because they are so cheap. I mean, they look really, really good. They play a ton. 4,400 for Kyrou is outstanding. 4,800 for Shen. 4,900 for Buchnevich. All really, really reasonable. So I like them the most in this game. But if you want to come down in price even more, if you're full, stacking a ton of Leafs or whatever it is, or trying to get in some Leafs and Flyers, or however you're building your lineups, and you need some value, Tarasenko and Thomas, it's hard to beat those two guys. It's a really, really good matchup. And maybe this is a game that potentially gets out of hand early because the Coyotes are terrible, and then the top two lines don't play quite as much. The third line gets a little bit more run than they did in a big game against the Avalanche in the opener. So, a couple things that definitely happen, and I think that they're very, very reasonably priced. So that is that. I'll go back here. Oops, wrong one. To the big board. Obviously, Toronto 1, Philly 1 look very good, but St. Louis 2 looks outstanding. Toronto 2, Calgary 1. Rangers 2 still looks okay. I don't love it, though. But for value, they're right there without question. So any Gostisbehere love? I think that Gostisbehere should probably get a little bit of recognition. He is running their top power play unit for whatever reason. Maybe it's to try to limit Chychrun's minutes a little bit. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I think Gostisbehere is okay. For that reason, I just, 5,200 is a little steep for me. So I'm probably not going to go there. If you're going to pay up for a Coyotes defenseman, 5,200 for Gostisbehere doesn't make a lot of sense when you can get Chychrun for 6,500. Yes, it's steep, but he's thrown 20 pucks at the net in 2 games. It's insane. Like, that's all he does is shoot. And he has to, because the rest of the team is terrible. So, he could hit the 5-shot bonus very easily, very quickly tonight, because all he does is throw pucks at the net. So if you're going to pay up for, even though he's on the top power play unit, do you really put a lot of stock into the Coyotes power play? They're not going to score enough goals this year to really matter. Chychrun's the only guy on the team that's really worth rostering in season-long and probably DFS as well. Didn't realize he was 52. Yeah, it's just too expensive. He spiked quickly. Brock, unrelated question tonight, but any plans for league sync with ESPN season-long league? Saw only option for Yahoo at the moment. No, yeah, it is only Yahoo at the moment. We are waiting and we are in talks with ESPN and Fantrax to try to, they just have to provide us with the information, the API, so that we can include them. We are the biggest fantasy hockey platform that there is. So I think that it would probably be good if they gave us that, but, we're still in talk. So yeah, unfortunately, as of now, it's only Yahoo. But there is plans to add ESPN and Fantrax as soon as possible. It's kind of out of our control at the moment. In terms of goalies and cheap defensemen, going back to DFS now, I still think Rasmus Sandin's a pretty reasonable play. 3,000. He's been playing quite a bit this year. He's still in the second power play unit. That second power play unit is not going to get a ton of run, but at 3,000, I think he's really good. I think my favorite deep punt on the slate is Carson Soucy. He's minimum price at 2,500, playing on the top pair with Mark Giordano. I think he played 19 minutes and 50 seconds in the opener. They are not going to get Vince Dunn back, so they're going to continue to really rely, because that third pair doesn't look great right now. They're going to really rely on Giordano and Soucy, and then Alexiak and Larson should play a ton of minutes. So Soucy at 2,500 is really, really cheap. It's impossible not to like Yandel again. He'll probably be the highest owned defenseman on the slate like he was the other night. He's just 3,400. Noah Hanafin, again, another guy that's playing a ton of minutes. He's on the second power play unit as well. I think he played like 22 or 23 minutes in the opener. He's only 4K. I can definitely get there. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot of really cheap defensemen that I like. It's, Niels Lundqvist, if you want to get desperate, but he only played 13 minutes in the last game, but he is on a power play unit. He can correlate with that Heidel if you're trying to get super cheap correlation on a power play unit. That's the way you want to go. Lundqvist at 2,600 is okay. Keandre Miller plays an absolute shitload. He's only 2,800. So there are options out there. But I think Soucy is definitely the top guy. What the F? ESPN gave the program. Yeah, they definitely need to get back to us with very soon. But goalies, like I mentioned, I've basically already talked about goalies on the slate. My highest projected goaltender tonight is Jakob Markstrom. The matchup's outstanding. As I mentioned, the Ducks are the lowest implied total on the slate, tied with the Coyotes. However, Markstrom should see at least more rubber than Binnington. Binnington will probably be the highest owned goalie on the slate. He's only 7,800 against the Coyotes. But the Coyotes couldn't even generate anything against the Sabres the other night. Like Carter Hutton, I think only faced I don't want to make up a number, but it wasn't a lot. It was like 18 shots maybe. Like it was just not enough. And if that's what Binnington's going to see tonight, like even if he's, stops 17 of 18 and gets the win, it's a decent night. But I think he could definitely be outscored by Markstrom, Campbell, Hart, and Grubauer. Depending on who wins that Philly-Seattle game. So I like Binnington, but I think that he could definitely have a kind of just some very mediocre night just because the Coyotes are that bad. But yeah, then it's just kind of pick your poison with Hart and Grubauer. I think it's whoever you think is going to win that game. Vegas and myself, I lean towards Philadelphia. So I like Hart a little bit better, but Grubauer is one of the cheapest goalies on the slate, just 7,400. So if you are fading Philadelphia in a lineup and you want or you need to save some salary between the pipes, I think Grubauer is probably the best of the cheap options. Like I absolutely will not play Carter Hutton. He's fucking terrible. I don't even know if I'm allowed to swear, but he's that bad. The Blues should just light him up. He's horrendous. John Gibson is okay. He's obviously a great goalie, but they're terrible, and the Flames are good. But John Gibson is the type of guy, like we saw it against the Jets, that could stop 36 shots and still have a good night even if they lose. So I think Gibson's an okay option at 7,300. But to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense to play Gibson, who could get lit at 73 when you can just pay up $500 for Binnington, who's like almost certain to win tonight. So that's just the way I look at it. But if you guys have any other questions here on the final moments before we go, if not, that's going to do it for today's DFO DFS report. It's going to take some time to get used to the new name. DFO DFS show it just flowed so easily off the tongue. So the DFO DFS report is going to take some time, but yeah. We don't have any further questions. That is going to do it for today's show. As always, we will be back tomorrow for another DFO DFS report, Monday through Friday. Good luck to everybody tonight. I hope you guys come back with more money in your bankroll tomorrow than you had going in tonight. Fuck that up too. But anyways, enjoy. Good luck. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow.